Hey everybody, just wanted to take a few seconds of your time before the podcast starts. Just wanted to let you know about a passion project of mine for the last 3 years called Hustle Focused Energy. It's a powdered drink mix intended to help you focus and accomplish your goals. Super excited to bring this to market. Go check it out, hustletheday.com. And thank you so much for listening. On this episode of the Hustle the Day podcast, I have Evan Knox. He is the founder of the agency Caffeine Marketing. He partners with businesses to help them succeed, and he's just got an interesting story. You're going to want to listen to this one, check it out, and let me know your comments after the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast. My name is Trent. Super excited to have Evan Knox here. Evan, we've been talking a little bit before we started recording, and already I'm fascinated by your story. But why don't you jump in here and tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Hey, what's up, Trent? Thanks so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I run a company called Caffeine Marketing that helps make marketing profitable for small companies that are doing less than $50 million a year in annual revenue. That might look like websites, advertising, sales funnels. Really, we design a custom strategy for each client so that their advertising and marketing makes money for them. So that's me. I'm also a small business investor. I'm a partner in a couple of different companies. And yeah, I'm a dad and a husband. It's cool as well.
Yeah, that is very cool. Congratulations. You've got almost a 1-year-old now. That's very exciting.
Yeah, we've kept them alive this long. So.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment. As a father of 3, we just went camping over the weekend, and my 1-year-old has little feet and is top heavy, and his face caught a few things, caught his fall a few times. So yeah, I can definitely relate to trying to keep them alive.
Yeah, I feel that.
So you've got a successful business now, and you're helping other successful businesses. But before we get too deep into that, I want to reel it back a little bit. Where is it that you decided that you wanted to start your own business? You wanted to be involved in entrepreneurship?
I don't know. This could just be me, but I feel like most sons, if they have a pretty decent dad, look up to their dads. And my dad was a business owner, and so I would always see him working really hard. Sometimes I wouldn't yell at him, but I'd tell him, "Hey, get off, stop writing checks, when you get home, and come play football with me." You know what I mean? But anyway, as an adult, I get that now, so I feel it. But anyway, so I always saw him as a really hardworking business owner, and I admired that about him. He was an awesome salesman as well. And my grandfather actually owned a jewelry company as well. So entrepreneurialism and business was always in, I guess, my DNA, really. And I remember, this is kind of funny. One time I was driving my mom's truck. I was 12 years old. Actually, I might have been 14. It was either 12 or somewhere in there. And I was driving my mom's truck at a barn that my mom kept her horse at. And she told me to. I didn't take it and go off with it, And actually, I'm pretty sure it was 12 because I was a better driver by 14. And I was driving the truck at the barn, and I backed the truck into a tree and poked a hole in the back of the bed of the truck. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, "Mom, don't worry about it. I'm going to be a successful business owner one day, and I'll buy you a new truck. But whatever you want." So fast forward today, I'm off the hook for the truck. She drives a hybrid now and doesn't want a truck. So I was like, "So are we good? Is the debt settled?" You know what I mean? I have to buy you a truck. So anyway, that was always kind of my family. We knew that that's what I wanted to do. And really, I got into marketing starting with my grandfather. So my grandfather took me aside one day as I was, quote, working at the shop at a similar age. And, I don't know what help a 12-year-old really is, but I'm beside him and he's teaching me stuff. And he's like, "Hey, so we're going to place an ad in the Atlanta Symphony." And they had these little, flyers basically that you could put in the back of seats of the Atlanta Symphony, which is a pretty high end, music venue here. And I remember him telling me, "Okay, here, we're going to put this here, this here, this here. most people would not do this, and we're going to do this instead. And if you don't do this, then you're going to waste money. And that was kind of my first wheel started to click as far as strategy and messaging goes. And I really enjoyed it. And then fast forward, which we could definitely go back in there, but fast forward to about 4 years ago, my dad passed away. And I was working at a nonprofit, and part of my role was marketing. And I thought, you know what? My grandfather's about to retire, and my dad's no longer here with us, but I can help other small business owners and entrepreneurs like them. So I decided to start Caffeine Marketing to help small companies, which is why we pretty much exclusively serve small companies that are doing less than 50 million, just because I don't know, personally, I feel connected to my dad in that way, if that makes sense. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Like we talked about prior to this, you know, I lost my dad about 12 and a half years ago now, but so I can relate to you on that. And he was an entrepreneur as well. But so my condolences, first of all, but I'm glad that you still have that connection through what you're doing now. But I want to take that back a little bit. When you were 12 and you put a hole in the bed of the truck and you said you were going to be a successful business owner, at that point in time, what did you think that path was?
I really had no clue that it was going to look like it does today. And I'm sure I'm going to look back in 10 years from now and look at, you know, current Evan and go, you had no idea, bro. You had no idea. But I definitely had no idea then. I was the kind of kid, which feels cliche now because entrepreneurialism is kind of popular and hip and people put it everywhere, which is fine. I think it's really cool, but it wasn't cool for my grandfather. It wasn't cool for my dad. You started your business because you couldn't get a job somewhere. And that's not to say my grandfather couldn't get a job, but like, that's kind of the thing, you know what I mean? It wasn't as sexy as it is today, but I grew up with that. I love that. And I also was always selling, you know, lemonade, or we live on a golf course. So I'd go get golf balls that fell into our yard, and then I would turn around and sell them to the golfers. And so I'm over there getting free golf balls and selling them for 50 cents or $1. You know what I mean? I also remember I started this company. I was so bad and naive as far as naming goes. I called one of them Champ Lawn Care. So CHAMP. Mm-hmm. I called it Champ Lawn Care because Champion Lawn Care was actually taken. And I was like, I'm just going to go with Champ. And I bought the domain. And then the other one I bought, which sounds so bad, and I cannot believe that my mom or anybody else didn't like pull me by the ear, but I called it Rent 18. So RENT 18. And I would like hire my friends out to like go move stuff or go do yard work for people or, you know, whatever. And I remember I actually sold my company, quote, company, right? Mm-hmm. I'll say I sold it for 3 figures. Okay. And I sold it to an underclassman at my high school when I graduated. And I said, hey, I'm going to give you my whole customer list. I sold it to you for this much. And that was my first exit.
Nice.
As a company. So I don't know. I just always loved it. And I always thought it was fun. I'm really a math guy. And so I feel like that's the most fun part of business to me is just running numbers and systems. And I kind of geek out about that stuff. So.
Nice. Well, you know, I'll be vulnerable here and tell you, you know, your naming convention was much better than mine when I was at that age, because in high school, I started an automotive parts business, and it was called Precision Import Motor Parts. The acronym was PIMP.
Oh, wow.
Pimp My Ride was popular around that time. And so it was like, oh, I'm going right in there. We're calling it
Pimp My Ride. Yeah, totally. Seems legit. Yeah. You look back and you're like, oh, geez. But that's fun. I'm sure I'll think that about caffeine one day too. So,
well, just from the research I've done on you, everybody absolutely loves that name. So,
yeah, I appreciate it. It's pretty cool. It took me like 5 months to come up with, but I was just drinking my coffee one day and I was like, oh, this makes sense. It's like all business owners and entrepreneurs are always drinking coffee. It's like part of the hustle culture. So that's what I went with.
Absolutely. No, it's nail meets hammer. I mean, that's definitely an applicable name and easy to remember. So it works great. Cool. So you work with a lot of these people nowadays, and with all these different types of companies, you know, less than $50 million of revenue, but you're multiple generation entrepreneur now. do you deal with people who are first generation entrepreneurs, and what is the difference in culture between that, or does that really even make a difference?
That's a great question. I would say that first or second, I've worked with somebody who's a fourth generation entrepreneur. Interestingly enough, that person remembers my grandfather, and they, not the fourth one, but like the third generation, whatever the next oldest guy was, because he moved to Atlanta and he was in a similar industry. And so he remembers my grandfather being like the guy of Atlanta. You know what I mean? Wow. He was like the go-to spot. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know that about my grandpa. I was like, it's kind of a big deal,
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, I've worked with those. The mindset is definitely different. It's like I'm carrying on a legacy, and I feel like that's really important as I've worked with those people. It's not just like, hey, I'm here to provide for not myself, but like building a business is fun. Like, I think it's a hobby. I mean, that's what my wife goes, you have so many jobs. I'm like, I don't have jobs. Like, I've got hobbies. Like, these are fun things that I get to do. And so I don't know. I feel like there's this, not weight, but like there's definitely more somberness and perspective. And like, if you think of the people in Japan, not just I'm not trying to stereotype here, but there are a lot of people over there who don't think, 10 years as far as revenue goals. They think 100 years, and sometimes thousands of years, because companies have been around that long. And so, like Samsung and all these other companies, like they're in the long game at this point. They're not just like, hey, how can I grow my company the next year, 2 year, or this quarter? How do I increase revenues this quarter? They're thinking, how do I increase revenues this decade? So generational businesses have, I think, a bigger perspective, whereas first startups, especially if they're new, like no one in their family has really done entrepreneurialism, they're just winging it. I mean, this is like figure out how we go, don't know how to grow a company. But they generally just starts off like they care about a product or service. It's like one of my partners is a fly fishing guide, and he got into this not to necessarily be a business owner, but to be a great fly fishing guide. I mean, to live outdoors and to get paid really well to do it. It's pretty cool. I mean, I'm kind of jealous of his lifestyle in a lot of ways. I'm like, I'm over here working on spreadsheets and he's over here reeling in fish, So anyway, there's definitely, I think, more of a franticness when it's a first time entrepreneur, and sometimes more of a settledness when it's the multi-generational one.
Awesome. That's a good perspective. And you know what, as you explain it, it's like, oh yeah, I can definitely see that, in myself being third generation entrepreneur now. Yeah. It is unique, in that regard, that it's not you got to do this now, or, the time has passed you by. I mean, you do have to have a sense of urgency, of course, in certain things, but
like my grandfather, for example, he is 88, I believe. I might be off by 2 years either way, but he just retired like a year ago, 2 years ago. Now, knowing what I know, like as far as business and systems and stuff, I would have loved to help him build systems where he could retire in his business, like 40 years ago, but he just loved it. I mean, it really just gave him purpose. And so we always kind of like, when my dad was around, we'd talk about my grandpa and I'd be like, why does grandpa not retire? My dad was like, he just likes it. Like, he just, like what keeps him waking up in the morning, you know what I mean? Something to live for. So it's fun.
So now, were you ever involved in, you talked about when you were 12, you helped out in the business, but did you ever have any specific roles in some of those family businesses?
Yeah. So I started on what we would call the bench, BENCH. And that meant that I was sitting there working on jewelry in the back of the shop. So I would be soldering things. Sometimes I'd carve things out of wax and we would cast them. And then eventually I ended up in the front. Really loved people. And so I'd be trying to sell stuff. And so I remember at 14, I sold a $22,000 pair of earrings. But let's be honest. I mean, now I'm looking back at it, like my grandpa definitely set me up. Like he was like, he probably knew that they were going to buy them already, or, I don't know. They had some sort of off conversation. And I was like, here they are, and whatever. So in my head, I'm taking credit for it though. So he can thank me for that. But we'll probably get a little bit more deep here, but my dad actually started to struggle with a narcotics addiction when I went into high school. He had that before my parents got married, but then he got clean and then relapsed when I went into high school. And at that point, I was fairly involved in his business. I understood the operations of it. I was not necessarily his assistant in a lot of ways, but could do a lot of the work that he was doing. And so I remember when my dad went to jail for a couple months, he actually he got out on my graduation and made it to my high school graduation, which, mixed feelings about all that for sure. Is an understatement. And then I remember though being at the store, and my dad was on the B2B side of the jewelry industry. So my grandfather mainly did direct to consumer. My dad did more like selling to my grandpa and also other jewelry stores. He would like import diamonds and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I understood the operations of his company, but I was 17. And I remember my dad being on the phone, my grandfather, actually my dad may not have been on the phone, but he gave my grandfather power of attorney and said that my dad wanted to sign the company over to me, and that my grandfather was on board. And it wasn't that like, hey, Evan is the best candidate out there, but I mean, he's all we got, really. I mean, and so I think in that moment, actually, I was like, well, this is kind of weird. I feel like I want to go do Christian mission work for a while. And so I eventually left high school and went and joined an organization called YWAM and did Christian missions for what ended up being 6 months overseas and then training here in the States for like a year and a half, 2 years. But super weird. So I was like, hey, I really feel like entrepreneurialism is great, but like right now during the season, I need to pursue this calling. And so I ended up turning that down. And that would have been, I think, a lot of fun, but I would not have grown personally if I had not experienced all the stuff that I did. And I'm thankful for that. But it is sad. My dad's company, everything got foreclosed on, his business shut down, everything got taken away from us and our family. And so with that, I remember coming home one day from school, getting off the school bus, walking to the front door and seeing the banknote of foreclosure. And in Georgia, if I remember correctly, based off the lawyer, is that I think they serve you a notice 3 times. They leave you like a slip, a certified postal slip or something if you like foreclose your property. In Georgia, they don't like make you appear or whatever. And I remember picking up the slip and I was like, Mom, what is this? You know what I mean? And she explained it to me. And it wasn't that my mom was, she was very good at not putting her fears on me and projecting that where I felt the weight of that. But I was aware. I was aware that we were losing everything. I was aware we had to move out of our house. And it was really scary. So that was a tough time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not something I've been through per se. And so I can't imagine going through that situation. We talked about before, we do have some parallels in that my dad, lost, his control of the business because of some issues that he had. And my mom ended up taking it over and doing so successfully. So we were fortunate in that regard. But I think that helped shape your future as well now. I mean, you've seen all this happen and going through this situation. I think that if I were put in your situation, it's like I might lean more on that Christian mission like you said you wanted to do, because it's like, man, I've lost, my family's lost everything. I need to figure out me.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, and this is, if somebody doesn't want to, take this with a grain of salt if you want, which is fine with me. But I had really just kind of discovered this relationship with Jesus and the Christian faith. And that started to be important to me. And then my parents ended up getting divorced. So everything starts happening. And so it was just, I'm really thankful for the timing of it, because even though my earthly father was struggling, I had a perfect heavenly father who was there with me. And that's not to say that I was not very angry and had to work through all of that and very scared, and it was just super hard, you know what I mean? But I was able to lean into this faith, and it really just started to mean the world to me, because I was like, man, God loves me so much that he's willing to give his life for me. I feel like there's something to that. And, the fact that they couldn't find a body after, Jesus resurrected from the dead, all these things really were convincing to me to lean into this faith when I feel like I could have leaned in a different direction. And I could have gone down a path that my dad was going down. And I just really I saw the fruit of what that had, and I saw the life that I was getting from this faith walk that I had. And that's why I feel like I really catapulted to go into mission work, was because I was getting so much life from this relationship with Jesus that I just wanted to tell other people about it. And I thought, you know what, as an 18-year-old with no wife or kids, it's probably the best time for me to just go do this. So it was a blast.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad you got that experience out of it, and, it's helped shape you who you are today. Was it shortly after you got back that you decide, hey, I'm going to start my own company, or how did that process go?
So I had the experience from when I was younger, which, I would say is very valuable. I wouldn't say I made a ton of money with it, but I learned, okay, you have to market. You have to follow up with people. You got to call them back as soon as they call you. There's certain things that you learn as far as building. I don't think I ever filed taxes for any of that income as a kid, but actually, I don't assume minors still file taxes. But anyway, so that process really helped me. And so fast forward to, I kept working in Christian work, like Christian ministry and stuff like that, which is great. And then we were leaving a church that I was working at, where I was doing half my role was marketing, and we were leaving Charlotte to come down to Atlanta. And that's when I thought, you know what, like I love business. And to me, it's always been something that I've kind of held open-handedly, or at least tried to, because it is really fun, but I never want it to take the first point in my heart. I don't want that to be the thing that's most important to me, which I feel like actually does help me in business in a lot of ways. Because if I'm on a call with somebody and I'm trying to help them, like actually today is a great example. So it was a smaller company, and they were mainly in-person sales, and then they're just transitioning to e-commerce in light of all that's going on. Mm-hmm. And it really would have been great to work with them a year ago, because they had revenue to support the investment that they're going to need to make in their marketing to make this work. But that being said, I wasn't sitting there like, I have to close this person because I want the money. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, I really want to help this person, because business to me is something that I get to do, and it's a fun hobby. And do I want to make money from it? Absolutely. And we are definitely not the cheapest people out there. But it's like not even on my top 5 priority list, to me, I always ask the question, what matters 100 years from now? And that answer is different for each person. But to me, it's like my faith and my family, and my friends. And past that, I'm like, again, business could go away tomorrow, and I think I'd be all right. It might take me a few weeks to kind of mourn over that, but I'd be fine.
Yeah. Well, I think that is, something I can definitely relate to, because, I at one point in my journey, I was a car salesman, and the people that were so successful are the people who are like, I don't even care if I get this sale. Like, it's just not important to me. And people would be attracted to that and be like, well, he doesn't care. Well, I'm gonna buy this. Whereas if it was me, where it was like, hey, all my business ventures have failed, I need this money. They can sense that, oh, he needs this, I better back off, kind of thing. Like,
yeah. There's totally something to that. And I mean, that's not to say that we can't learn and be better at our craft. I'm not the best at sales as much as I enjoy it. I'm thankful that we have enough leads that kind of make up for my inability to sell. But you can always get better. It's not like I can't do good at sales and I can't run a profitable company. That's not like it runs in opposition. But in my heart, I just want to make sure that it has the proper place, that my family and stuff like that are coming first. So
yeah. Absolutely. So one thing I think that um, entrepreneurship in general, you don't talk too much about is, what some of those failures were that happened to you as you start this company. What would you say was your biggest failure starting Caffeine Marketing, and what did you learn from it?
I've definitely offended some people. There's been a lot. I think that's probably, if anything that I've done wrong, it's probably offending people. In the beginning, we were trying to pay off $100,000 in student loan debt, or that and car debt together. It was like 100,000. And I had like no money for advertising, and I was offering advertising. So I had to just DM people and do a lot of cold calling so that I could get revenue to pay off student loan debt so that I could then have a marketing system for myself. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, in that process, I certainly rubbed people the wrong way and had many people let me know that they did not like what I was saying, or I hurt their feelings, or was pushy, and I definitely don't think I was pushy, but I think where it comes in place is I might have been insensitive because I was doing things at scale, which I still am guilty of today. So anyway, the other thing, which is funny, is my worst financial investment. I took a couple $1,000s that I made from Caffeine, mm-hmm. and I have we've got the 401k and stuff like that. But I was I'm going to try my hand at the stock market. And I've got no business being over there. I should just buy index funds, or I should subscribe to the Motley Fool, which I do now, and has worked out pretty well. So, but before that, I was I'm just going to wing it. And so I took a couple $1,000s, and this is so embarrassing, but I love it at the same time, is that I invested in MoviePass. And
okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's right. And the company went insolvent, basically. The stock went from, my cup, I think it was $3,000 or $4,000 that I had in holdings. And I remember it went down, and then what's the averaged out? So I bought in again, and then it went up. And so then I was in the green for my total. And I thought to myself, I should really sell right now. I should probably sell. And I'm sure every person that does anything with stocks feels this way, but I didn't. And it went down to zero. I think I eventually closed out at $5 and took that loss for the year. So that's my worst financial. It's not necessarily caffeine, but
right. something you learned from. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Understandable. Well, I think you've definitely learned something from that, and you are now, like you mentioned, you're investing in other companies. What has that experience been like for you to not only help other companies with their marketing, but now to actually be a partner in some of those companies?
That to me is the most fun. I think I was telling my wife, I think it was last week or something like that. It feels like the most pure form of what I'm looking for, in that when I'm working with a client, I have to keep in mind that there's this relationship. Even though they might trust me as much as they can trust me, I'm still selling them something. And so whenever I'm coming in, I know that I'm hey, we should do this, this, and this. I'll give you three options. Do you want to do this package, this package, this package? I'm confident those three things that I'm offering are going to grow their company, but there's a different relationship. I have to focus on basically dynamics with them instead of growing the company. I spend time, okay, I got to make sure that they're happy. I got to make sure that I fill out this report so that they understand how we're making the money, whatever. Whereas if I'm a partner in the company, we trust each other because we're partners, and we have mutual accountability to our budget. And so, it's so fun because I'm hey, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to bring in this person to do this, or this person to do that, or I'm going to spend this much money on ads. And it doesn't ever feel like I'm having to prove something to somebody to make sure that my spot is secured. We have a mutually vested interest and a trust with one another. So that's my favorite thing with it. And then honestly, it's been really cool to see these companies that the business owner has struggled to grow it, and then we've been able to 4 or 3x it within a matter of months, which has been so cool. Last week I was not last week. Thursday morning I was on a call, and we were having to hire 2 people just to keep up with the demand which has been really cool. So I don't know. It's just like cool stories like that, where it's just like, we're a team, we're figuring it out together, and I don't know, you develop more friendships that way, I feel like, as well, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that you're, helping businesses grow in this time is, fantastic in its own right, but you're helping provide livelihood. It's not just a matter of, hey, let's grow your business by 10% over this time frame. It's let's provide for this employee that personally, and it's definitely a different dynamic.
You're right. It's very interesting you say that. So there's a couple businesses that I like, just Evan, as in myself. Actually, it's Caffeine technically, but it's like as a partner in. And then there's other ones where it's my investment group. So it's me and two other guys. And we both have similar, not necessarily similar experiences, but like a similar mindset and values and all that stuff. And on one of our most recent partnerships, we came in as a partner into another company. And it was very interesting because I was like, hey guys, are you picking up a vibe from some of the employees that we just like in the company? And I couldn't quite articulate it. And I was kind of just throwing it to them like, hey, am I sensing something? Are they not like us? Did I say something? Am I offending people? You know what I mean? And they were like, no. They didn't say it quite like that, but they were like, you know what? I think that they just really care. They just really care about the people on that team, and they want this to work because it, up to this point, has not worked out so well. And they've been struggling to grow. And so that person who is kind of like the manager is thinking, all right, if I don't grow this, then I'm going to have to let Susie go and Roxy go. And I know all this. So they just really care. They just cared about the people. So I think you're right. I mean, I literally witnessed that yesterday, and understand that, there's these people's lives depend on it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that seems like the actual investing in the companies seems to be the more rewarding, fulfilling aspect for you. Is that something you plan to pursue more in the future?
Yeah, I think the direction I want to go with Caffeine is one of less work, more meaningful work, and to where it's just a really good fit. And so we probably, maybe at least 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10 people we end up not working with just because it's not a perfect fit. And I really do want to make marketing profitable. So sometimes I'll see it and I go, I don't think it's going to work. So we just won't work with them. Then the investing side, though, is a lot of fun. So, I mean, my time, as far as that's allocated, I'd love to see more towards the investment piece. So,
okay. Very cool. Yeah. So, you've been through this, you've had a lot of entrepreneurial journeys throughout your life. If you're starting a company today, what would you do differently than what you've done in the past?
Probably have partners. I started Caffeine. I'm the sole owner of Caffeine. And it has been hard. It is very hard to create and run your own company. And it's not to say that it can't be done, because I'm not like the pinnacle of success. There's plenty of people who make way much more money than I do. But I mean, it's to my terms, like it's worked out well. But that being said, I mean, it's hard. I mean, because at the end of the day, you're the one responsible. And if you don't get up and work, it's on you. And if you don't build the right systems, you can't take a break. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs build a job for themselves. And so I've tried to transition to where it's more of a system where I can step away for longer and longer periods of time. Some companies I'm involved in, that's not really, there's good systems in place where I can step out and it's fine. It can autopilot for a month or two. Whereas Caffeine, there's still elements that I have to be here for. And that's okay. I'll come to terms with that. It's not to say that it can't change, but I don't have a desire to change that at this moment, because it's just the way that I've designed my business. But I think a lot of them out there, kind of getting sidetracked, but a lot of businesses out there would be well served to create systems and processes so that they can step away from their company, and it doesn't ultimately consume them. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think your answer is very common with people that I've talked to is one, hire sooner or partner sooner or establish the systems and the processes initially rather than try and figure them out on as you go. I mean, that's a lot of entrepreneurs are winging it, like you said, even if you are second or third generation. And so
totally,
I think your answer is spot on with what most people say is, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I, bring somebody on? Why didn't I play to their strengths rather than take it all on myself?
Yeah. And there's one guy who's great. When we were exploring partnering together, and as we talked about our skill sets, it's like, bro, like we have the same skill sets. It's not a good sign. We both want to do like the strategy. None of us want to do the technical stuff. I'm like, that's not what I want to do. That's not what you want to do. So eventually at some point it's going to be like, well, who's going to do it? Which is fine. And that has to happen. You have to be a team player. There's plenty of like team player moments, just got to make it happen, be a team player. But I mean, I'm not an operations guy. I mean, I love systems and processes, but like, I don't enjoy it necessarily as far as like fulfillment or managing a bunch of people. Like I want to manage a few people, but I don't want to manage big teams. So I think you would be well served to find a partner who has different strengths and things that they enjoy. And they don't have to be a majority owner. Like if you started the company and you're already, at 6 figures or high 5 figures, go find a partner and say, hey, I want to bring you into this. And like, can we bring you in at 10%? And if we hit a certain revenue number, I'll bring you in at 30%. Something like that. That would be, I think, cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I can speak to that entirely because I did partner on a company where we wanted to do the same things and it didn't work out because it got down to, okay, it's time for the nitty gritty stuff. And, there's only so many times you can be the team player, like you said. And it's like, this is just becoming my job and this is not enjoyable anymore. Yep. So,
and I try to, there's a guy on our team, our investment team, who is great. I don't love the guy, but I really like him. And I always try to look out for him because he doesn't think the same way that I think, which is he probably did the same thing for me in his own strengths, but he will get caught up in details. And I'm like, hey, Nick, I'm like, bro, we got to hire you a virtual assistant or something. I'm like, you can't be spending 4 hours a day on emails. I'm like, no way, dude. Like, I don't know what the best use of your time is. That's up to you to decide, but it definitely ain't emails. I'm like, so whatever we can do to not have you doing that is probably better for the company. So you got to look out for one another. But yeah, I mean, Nick and I have very different strengths as well as my other partners. So
yeah, for sure. And you know what, you bring up, virtual assistants. There's definitely been a interesting dynamic with virtual assistants during this time, because some people are doubling down and some people are scaling back. What have you experienced in your business? Are you adding more virtual assistants at this time, or is this kind of let's wait and see how this plays out and then we'll add more to it?
So funny enough, I'm a partner in a virtual assistant company. So go to virtualgrowth.io, and you can look it up. And we're redoing the website, which should hopefully go live in the next few days. But I don't have a good read on as far as that. We're new to the partnership there, so I don't have a good read on overall what the market is doing. But I will say for our group that is growing, yes. That's like, for example, bringing Nick in for an assistant would be great. But sometimes it's technical. Like right now we've got a bottleneck with a graphic designer. He's on one of our teams and he's great, but we have so much work for him to do right now. We need to look into different options because I got projects that I need done right now that have been in the queue for a month or 2 months. So that's a good indication of it's time to hire,
Right. Absolutely. So going back a little bit, tying into the generational aspect of entrepreneurship with you, and then also talking about legacy, is it something that you think you will encourage your 11-month-old to get into the entrepreneurship game, or are you going to be hands off and kind of let them go from there?
I only know so much about parenting at this point. You've definitely got more experience than I do. I will say that I am a little bit more on the not opinionated, but strong conviction side. And so I will definitely try to make sure that he understands the options that he has, and also, what this is. I'm going to try to educate him. Hey, here's what I'm doing. Cause that's what my grandpa did for me. That's what my dad did for me. I remember my dad teaching me about sales, I still remember this stuff. I mean, he would give me an analogy. He'd be like, I would sit next to him as he would try to sell to people. And he'd be like, all right, now I want you to imagine we're looking at these two diamonds right here. And this diamond right here, both of these are Porsche 911 Carreras. And they're both the GT3 RS package, the highest end package you could have. But one of them is $7,000 less. And you might be asking yourself, why is that $7,000 less? Well, if you hop under the dash and you crawl up underneath the dash and you get a microscope, you can see that there's tears in the leather underneath the dash. Which one would you buy? The one that you could see the tears in the dash or not? It's like, you would buy the one that has tears in the dash and save you $7,000 because no one will ever look under there. So he would have all these little things to sell stuff. And I don't know, I just love that. So I'm going to try to teach my son that, but I have no pressure. He could be whoever he wants. I would love for him to, have a similar faith that I have and love Jesus. That's probably the first and most important thing to me. I can't make him do that, but I'll share to him how that's been important to me and share him that thought process. But then aside from that, I'm just going to equip him and tell him to do whatever he wants. But this is also probably an unpopular opinion, but I'm not paying for his college because I personally did not have that opportunity provided to me, and it made me innovate. And eventually, after starting my agency, I went back to college and created a company in order to pay for all my other stuff and got my degree within 5 months. And so I don't know. To me, it was helpful, but it came out of necessity for me. It was like my mom didn't have anything she could get me, put a roof on my head. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm not going to do that, but I'll give them opportunity and teach them. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know what? It is great to equip them with those tools and let them decide what to do with it. My daughter, who's 7, she just recently started a dog services business. She wants to do dog washing and dog walking and poop cleanup and, all that stuff. And you know what? She enjoys seeing me do these sort of things. Like every time, so the intro to this podcast, it's that I end up recording separate from us talking right now. Usually I have, one daughter on one side, one daughter on the other side, and they're just dancing in the background because they love being able to be seen on video. And I have to sit there and do take after take because I'm laughing at them, standing in the background, jumping around, and they love, like, Dad, when are you recording another intro to the podcast? I want to be down there and, be involved in it. And, they've watched some of those things, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but, obviously that video doesn't end up getting put on the podcast, but it's something that I have. Yeah. Obviously the audio gets put on there, but, it's fun to see her, she drew a picture of me for Father's Day, and it shows me in my hustle gear. I've got a hustle shirt and a hustle hat and all this. And now she's got her own dog services shirt, and she takes such pride in that. And it's just awesome to see that. But obviously I don't think that's for everybody, but she's leaning into it, and I'm loving every second of it.
Yeah. And I think we live in a world now where technology has afforded us that even if she was like, hey, I'm going to, do whatever. I'm a CEO of something one day, or administrative assistant, or whatever she felt like she wanted to do, she could do that, but she could also have a side hustle. Like side hustles are the best, so if she wanted to run a dog sitting company as a side hustle, that's great. But I have to say this funny story, because when I moved to Colorado, I needed a job. I tried to, so I went out there for the university stuff, and then I wanted to work at a church out there. And there was probably a couple months overlap. I think it was 6 or 7 months where I had to wait to work for that church. And I was trying to get a job. And I remember I applied it everywhere. I mean, I just huge number of places. I applied for a place that picks up dog poop. Okay. I go in and interview, and I think it goes pretty well. I'm thinking, I mean, how bad could it be? I go in, interview, I get done. They give me a call back a week later and said, hey, I'll be honest, we just didn't really think that you were qualified. And I was like, you think I was qualified to pick up poop? I'm like, I didn't say that, but in my head, I was like, I cannot wait to share this story one day with somebody. So,
well, perfect timing right there. That's awesome.
Perfect timing. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's the question: is were you overqualified, or what was the
underqualified?
There, I don't know. Underqualified.
They verbatim is what they said. Hey, honestly, we just a little underqualified. We found some other people we thought might be more qualified for this job. And I was like, do you know what job you're talking about right now?
Yeah, that is crazy.
So weird.
And fortunately I've, found my path now, but there was a time where I was applying for literally everything. And
oh yeah.
You know what? I mean, from reception jobs to director of marketing, which I wasn't qualified for at that point in time. It was like, I'm just applying for everything, but I changed everything specific to the, tweak the resume, tweak the cover letter and whatnot, everything for that. But there's fortunately, you not getting that job brought you to where you are now. So and you've got a fun story to tell about it.
100%. I can't wait to tell Titan. I'm be like, buddy, you just listen up. You're qualified no matter what anybody says.
Yeah. So, let's see if you can bring it full circle and partner on a dog pooper scooper business here in the future.
I know. Yeah, that would. If you're out there listening to this and that's your business and you want a business partner, let's talk. Go put the old competition out of business. Tell them that's actually malicious. I'm not typically that kind of guy, but that's funny though.
Absolutely. Well, I want to give you a chance to, plug what you're doing and, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to ask you before we get to that, what is it that excites you about the future, personal or business?
Well, we just bought a house. So that's fun. I'm really excited about that. And that's probably personally. And then professionally, I just look forward to growing these companies and spending more time with my family. And I don't know, it sounds kind of simple, but I don't know. I like people and I like putting money in the bank and I like hanging up friends. So we're just going to keep doing more of that and see how it goes. So
there you go. That works though. I mean, keep it simple and you know what, it'll help keep you happy,
Yeah, I feel it. And I'll talk about the thing that's on my website. So I got a free guide on caffeine.marketing and evanknox.com. It teaches you how to build a winning sales funnel. So if you're responsible for growing your company or the business that you work at, or you're the business owner, it's like Lego kits. I mean, it's like a checklist that will teach you how to create your marketing so that it's actually profitable for you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to include links in the show description to that information. Anywhere else that people should be following you?
Instagram is probably where I'm the most active, not super active, but it's Evan B. Knox, and just Instagram at Evan B. Knox.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you for your time, Evan, and appreciate you sharing your story. Super interesting. And, I appreciate, all that we can relate on. And I'm sure that, there's more people out there that are definitely going to relate to this episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I know my audience has gotten value out of this because I've gotten value out of this. So I encourage you all to get out there and hustle the day.